Hello and welcome to the channel. I'm Annie, this is Stanley, and we're here to talk about books. So let's address the elephant in the room before we start. I know that I look like a psychotic jester, but we are where we are. I made this scarf for Stanley over the summer, which has a granny square for each of the books I read in my first 2 months as a booktuber. And then I thought, why not? Let's do the other 4 months to complete a 6-month journey in crocheted granny squares. And I made myself this cardigan, which I appreciate is totally ridiculous and looks terrible and is very badly made. But anyway, I made it for this video. I'm wearing it in this video. That's just the way it is. Anyway, this video is going to be my top 10 books of 2025, which was the first year that I started my BookTube channel. I started in April, but I still have the records of all the books that I read in January, February, and March. And this is my top 10. But before we get to the books, let's make some tea. So you will see there is a terrible state of affairs where half the drawers in the main cabinet are empty. So we only have 15 drawers to choose from. So I have a D6 and a D10, and we're going to ignore the 0 if it comes up. 3 and 2 is 5. So that is white and green, lavender and rose. Ooh, excellent. Not mad about that at all. Good old past me has already boiled the kettle. We are ready to go. Don't want to overfill this teapot. Oh, excellent. White and green, lavender and rose. Lovely. So now that we've got our tea, let's get on to the books. I have some notes here. 2025, going into 2025, it was going to be the year that I decided to relax about my reading, not worry about how many books I was getting through, just pick up whatever I felt like and read when I wanted to and not make it into any kind of a challenge or a competition and that just went completely awry very, very quickly, even before I started the BookTube channel. But I have to admit, starting the BookTube channel didn't help with that aspect of my reading. But I regret nothing because I've had an amazing, amazing reading year, not least because I've discovered reading challenges, which turned into even more of a challenge and a competition and tracking how many books I've read and etc., etc. And in 2023, I read 78 books and DNF'd 16. In 2024, I read 101 books, which is why I was thinking by the end of 2024 that I really needed to relax a bit and not worry about it so much. Because previous to that, I'd been around sort of 75, 85. And I DNF'd 20 in 2024. In 2025, somehow, and I really honestly can't explain how this happened. I mean, I didn't have a lot of work in 2025. I think that has a lot to do with it. And obviously, you know, reading challenges and BookTube channel. But anyway, I somehow read 164 books, which is nonsense. It's so ridiculous. I mean, I'm not one of those people who's like, oh, I read 164 books. And if you haven't read that many, rah, rah, rah. No, I mean, that's just silly. Don't read 164 books in a year. No, don't be me. Just don't do it. But I also DNF 33, which is a lot. So it's been a mixed bag, shall we say. There were 98 physical books, 19 ebooks, which is a new thing for me. I started borrowing Dave's e-reader, largely because of my Read It or Yeet It challenge series, where I pick the least appealing books on my TBR. And a lot of those are on the e-reader for some reason. They were in our account and we don't know why. So I stuck them on and read some of them. And also because I've been reading NetGalley ARCs for new releases for reading challenges, and 47 audiobooks. So quite a range. Good split there. It's usually about half the number of audiobooks to the number of physical books, so that tracks. And my average rating for the books I finished was 3.5. Now, I am pretty stingy, I have to admit, with ratings. I very rarely give a book 5 stars. But I have had quite a lot of 4.5 stars. So I had 3 5-star books this year, which we will get to eventually. And I had to pick 7 of the 4.5 star books. And there were quite a lot of 4.5 star books to choose from. And so, yeah, it's been a pretty good reading year overall, I would say. Mostly enjoyed it. So, getting to the books. Number 10 in the list, which I picked to fulfill the 7+ colours on the cover. So never would have been on my TBR if it hadn't been for Herkyard 2.0, the hardest reading challenge you'll ever do. And that was The Beautiful Something Else by Ash van Otterloo, which tells the story of a young person whose name is Sparrow. And they have a difficult relationship with their mother. And after an accident involving the mother being high on drugs, I think she was struggling with drug addiction, Sparrow ends up going to live with their aunt at a caravan park on the grounds of the family estate. And it's about Sparrow's journey towards finding more about their identity and discovering how to love themselves and other people more. And it was just a really, really beautiful book, and I really enjoyed it. It was very unexpected. There were some magic boots that brought Sparrow's shadow to life, and the shadow helped Sparrow find themselves and do things that they wouldn't normally do, and forge friendships at their new school. And it was just a really, really lovely, lovely book. And I really enjoyed it. Next up was something that Dave found. Is so heavy. One of the first sets of books that I read in the year, right at the start of January in 2025. I read all 9 volumes of Amulet by, I always get this wrong, Kazu Kibuishi, which is a middle grade comic book series. I'm going to put it down because it's very heavy, which Dave found a recommendation for. So again, not something that I picked for myself, and I really, really enjoyed it. Over the course of the volumes, they went from, I think, 3.5 stars to 5 stars, but most of them were 4 and 4.5. So I gave it 4.5 stars overall. And it's about 2 young kids who go through a portal in their great-grandfather, I think's house, into another world where the girl, Emily, is chosen by an amulet, which she then has to fight against the influence of the amulet, but she is also pivotal in saving the world that they have entered into from shadow creatures, so more shadow creatures. And her brother Navin ends up being a commander of the rebel army. And it's great, really fun, really beautiful art, really intricate story, which did maybe get a little bit overcomplicated towards the end. It's quite darker than I would expect from a middle grade. But yes, really enjoyed it overall. We read it again recently for Family Book Club, and I enjoyed it again. So that was another good unexpected find for 2025. Put that over there. Ooh. Next up was one of my choices. It was Mr. Mercedes by Stephen King, which I picked for one of my Reviews Revisited videos, where I pick a book that I read a long time ago and I don't really remember much, and I reread it and then compare my thoughts now to my original review. And I knew that Mr. Mercedes had been in my reviews catalogue from a long time ago, but I didn't remember anything about it, and I was surprised to discover that I'd read any Stephen King. And I also knew that I hadn't carried on with the series, so I was a little bit apprehensive going in. And I really, really enjoyed it. The Bill Hodges trilogy overall, I think, went downhill after the first one. I didn't enjoy the second one as much, and then I didn't enjoy the third one as much. the first one really held up. I gave it 4.5 stars. I listened to the audiobook, which was really, really well read by Will Patton, who is one of my favourite audiobook narrators. And it's about a retired detective who gets embroiled in a case from before he retired, where a young man stole a car and then drove it into a whole load of people outside a job centre. And he'd never been caught. And then he starts taunting the detective with letters and online messages. And the detective has to try and figure out who it is and bring him to justice. I thought it was really interesting that we know as the reader who the perpetrator is pretty much right from the start, because we get a viewpoint narrative from his point of view, as well as following Bill Hodges, the retired detective. So it's interesting from that point of view. We're not trying to figure out who the bad guy is. We know from the start. And it was really well put together. I thought the characters were very interesting. I really enjoyed the introduction of Holly and Jerome, who both help out Bill investigating. Yeah, it was really good. Very thrilling. Not too grim. It was pretty unpleasant in places, but it didn't tip over the edge for me. Yeah, I'm glad I read it. I'm glad I went back to it. And I'm glad I finished the trilogy, even though I didn't love the other two as much as the first one. Next up is Your Letter by Hyun A. Cho, which is a middle grade again, so pretty big, pretty high on the middle grade for this, because we had The Beautiful Something Else, we've got Amulet, and we've got this. It's graphic novel, which, again, graphic novel, similar to Amulet. Well, very different to Amulet, but same format, which I picked up to fulfill a prompt, I think, along the way somewhere, which was recommended to me by another booktuber. So again, YouTube connection. I wouldn't have found it otherwise. And it's about a girl who goes to a new school, and she finds a letter taped under her desk, which sends her on a scavenger hunt around the school to meet various members of staff and other students, and get to know the school a lot better than she might have done otherwise. And she ends up making friends with a boy who is also connected to the letter writer. And it was lovely. I thought the ending was maybe a little bit abrupt. I would have preferred a bit more of the aftermath of what happens at the end. But yes, it was very well put together. It was really intriguing. It was very heartfelt and emotional. So I gave that one 4.5 stars as well. Next up was another Herkyard inspiration. One of the squares on the Herkyard bingo board is different heritage months, and one of those is Jewish heritage. And I found The Amazing Adventures of Cavalier and Clay by Michael Chabon, and absolutely loved this book. This was very close to being a 5-star, and apart from 50 pages in the middle, which were some of the most unpleasant things I've ever read in a book, really grim. It's about two young men who start writing comic books in the 1930s, and then follows their progress through the war. One of them does go to war, which is the 50 pages in the middle, which I really didn't like at all. But otherwise, really rich storytelling. It's a pretty chonky book, but I really, really enjoyed it all the way through. I was really involved, really invested. The interrelationships are really interesting, the way things develop. And yeah, absolutely loved it. I'm definitely going to be picking up more books by this author. Very close to being 5 stars. Didn't quite make it because of the grimness in the middle. But yes, highly recommended. Next up is the pretty much last book that I read in 2025. So Amulet was almost the first book that I read in 2025. And another one on this list is almost the last book that I read in 2025, which was Trio by William Boyd. And I'd had a bit of a mixed experience with him in the past, so I was a little bit apprehensive about this going in. I had picked it up, I think, in the charity shop or on the local station free book exchange, because I'd recognised the author's name. And then I read another one of his, The Blue Afternoon, which I absolutely hated and didn't finish. So I stuck it on my Read It or Yeet It spinner wheel, which is another series of videos that I make on this channel, where I have a spinner wheel of my least appealing books on my TBR, which I might never have got to otherwise if I have other options of things to choose. And then the spinner wheel picks 3 books for each episode, and I give them 50 pages to hook me in. And if I don't, then Stanley yeets them off camera. And otherwise I read the rest and review them properly. And yeah, I was apprehensive going in, but I really enjoyed this. It's about a film being made in Brighton in 1968, and we follow the director's wife, one of the producers, and the female star, and how their stories interweave and develop over the course of the summer when the film is being made. Yeah, it's a very internal book. It's very literary, not a huge amount happens. There's not massive amounts of direct action, but it's very sharply observed, very well written. Really enjoyed it, and I'm very glad that the Read It or Yeet It wheel picked it for me, because otherwise I might not have ever get around to reading it. 4.5 stars for this one. And next up was a different challenge. So I also joined the Reddit Fantasy Bingo Challenge, where there's a bingo board of 25 books which have to be fantasy, science fiction, or horror. And I hadn't actually been reading that much fantasy and science fiction. I don't tend to read horror, but I hadn't been reading that much fantasy and science fiction up until that part in the year, because I've been getting most of my books from charity shops around where I live, and there's not a huge amount of fantasy and sci-fi in those. And so that prompted me to pick lots of different books that I wouldn't otherwise have found or put onto my list. And one of them was a book that's set in an impossible place. And I picked The Imaginary Corpse by Tyler Hayes. And also this has a YouTube connection, because this was in one of Becca and the Books videos, and she read it and I thought it sounded interesting. So when I was looking for fantasy and sci-fi, I thought, oh, yeah, let's go for that. And it's set in a realm where imaginary friends and ideas go once their human creators let go of them and are not in need of them anymore. And the protagonist is Tippy, the Triceratops, who is a private detective. And there's a creature or a force that invades the realm and starts killing the imaginary friends and ideas, and normally they can't die. And so Tippy takes on the quest of trying to figure out the mystery and solve the murders. And this book absolutely broke me. I read it in the summer on a week-long reading retreat, which I went on, which was absolutely glorious. And I read a ton of the books for the Reddit Fantasy Bingo during that week, and had a really fantastic time. And I made a video all about it, which I think is one of my best videos that I've made this year. But yes, this made me cry so much. It was really affecting, because, I mean, I'm a big fan of imaginary friends. Well, he's not imaginary, he's right here. But teddy bears and stuffed animals and that kind of thing really affects me when bad things happen to those kinds of things. And yeah, it was a rough one, this one. It was emotional. I don't think I've cried so much reading a book ever. But I loved it. I really loved it. This was also very close to a 5-star for me, but didn't quite make it because I wasn't wholly satisfied by the ending. But yes, really involving, really affecting. I would highly recommend it. But if you, like me, are a fan of stuffed animals and imaginary friends, it's a rough ride, I'm not going to lie, but very well done. As you may or may not know, Stanley and I wrote a book a couple of years ago called Meditations on Being Amazing, One Bear's Guide to Acknowledging Your Own Worth. And it's all about building a better relationship with yourself, because Stanley knows you're amazing and he wants you to know you're amazing too. So it's part memoir with stories from Stanley's life, and also contributions from those who know and love Stanley outside our immediate household. Part self-help book with lessons from life about treating yourself as a friend, or dealing with difficult parts of your life. Meditation guide, there are meditations in here, and also discovery journals. So there are journal pages where Stanley will give you a prompt for you to reflect on your relationship with yourself and improve it. And there's also beautiful illustrations of Stanley, and this one's got me in it. It's a gorgeous book, really wonderful. Lots of people have said that it's really helped them with thinking better of themselves and treating themselves better, and also improving their relationships with other people in their lives. So, you know, Stanley's very wise. He knows what he's talking about. And the distribution contract with the publisher is coming to a close at the end of January. So it might be going out of print. Don't know what the future of the book is yet, but it may well be going out of print at the end of January. So if you've ever been tempted, or if you're tempted now is the time to buy this beautiful little book all about Stanley's wisdom and ways to improve your relationship with yourself. If you go to my website, aloebear.co.uk, you can find information about where to buy it, and also my novels if you are interested in those. Thank you, and Stanley thanks you too. And then we get into my top 3, the only 5-star books that I have read in the whole of 2025. One of them was a book that my brother gave me, which had sat on the shelf for over 3 years with me not reading it because I didn't want to read it. So never would have read it if it hadn't been for my BookTube channel, where I decided early on in June, I think, to read all of the books that my brother had given me that I hadn't read yet. One of them was another Read It or Yeet It spinner wheel choice. So again, probably would never have got to it otherwise. And one of them was I'd found it in a charity shop and immediately rejected it, and then went back and bought it anyway because I thought it would be funny to have it on the shelf. And it ended up being something that my TBR prompt jar picked for me. No, it wasn't the TBR prompt jar. It was Dave. It was my husband, Dave. I gave him a range of numbers to pick my books in a month for my TBR, and he picked this one. So anyway, without further ado, the top 3. So we have Index, A History of the by Dennis Duncan, which is the one that my brother gave me that languished on the shelf for 3 years because I just wasn't interested in reading it, despite the fact that David read it and said it was amazing. And he was right. It was amazing. Really, really fascinating, really well written. I don't tend to pick up nonfiction that much, and the subject matter just didn't interest me. But wow, very, very readable, really funny, which I wasn't expecting. And it's all about the history of indexing and categorizing information in books. Very amusing, very entertaining, highly recommended. This was my first 5-star book of the year. And it was I hadn't had a 5-star book for a very long time before this. So yes, excellent book. Definitely my top nonfiction book of the year. Highly recommended, regardless of whether you think you're interested in the information or not, because I was not, and I still really enjoyed it. And then my penultimate one was another big surprise, and it was One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest by Ken Kesey, which was never on my TBR. It's one of the ebooks which was randomly on our ebook account, our shared ebook account. And Dave and I have no idea where these books came from, but it was just randomly there. And so I put it on the Read It or Yeet It spinner wheel because I thought, why not? I was looking for books that I had available to me, which I wasn't so interested in. Phenomenal book, absolutely amazing. Again, really affecting, not a jolly read, but it stayed with me. I think about it often. I've never seen the film, I'd never read the book. I had some idea of what it was about, but it did take me by surprise because I was expecting the Jack Nicholson character from the film to be the point of view character, and it was not. It was another patient on the psychiatric ward. Really, really affecting story, very, very well written. Very emotional, definitely hit me very hard. The ending was really devastating, but fantastically well written. Yeah, definitely 5-star read. So definitely a success for Read It or Yeet It. And then final book, the one that I found in the charity shop and just bought because I thought it'd be funny. And then Dave picked it for my TBR using random numbers. Never would have anticipated that this would be my top book of the year, but absolute 5-star read. The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt. Another chonker. Probably would have sat on my shelf forever, and I never would have got around to it because even though I did like The Secret History, I'd heard that this one was quite dreary and quite depressing. And it is a tough read in places. It's quite dark in terms of its themes. It's about a young boy whose mother is killed in an explosion in a art gallery, an art exhibition, and he inadvertently takes a painting from the museum in the aftermath of the explosion, and then there's a whole obsession and shenanigans around him having this painting and what happens to him later in his life. At root, it's kind of a whole load of unlikable characters doing terrible things to themselves and to each other. And it doesn't sound like it would be very interesting. And even though it's very chonky, it's very internal, quite literary, and not actually a huge amount happens. But wow, I was so incredibly invested in this young man's story and the people that he meets and what happens to him in his life. It got maybe a little bit weird and a little bit thrillery towards the end. There was some murders and some running around, but really stayed with me. Really, really involving. I read it in 4 or 5 days, I think, and absolutely loved it. And I'm definitely going to be looking for more Donna Tartt books. So those are my top 10 books of the year. I had a conversation with my brother actually because he's very faithful viewer of my channel. So thank you, David, for supporting me over the course of this year. And he pointed out that the books that I've given the 5 stars are probably the 3 that I've read this year that I was least expecting to like in a lot of ways. And that's possibly why I ended up giving them 5 stars when I enjoyed them, because they so exceeded my expectations. And he's probably right. Star ratings are very subjective. And I know from my Reviews Revisited videos that I often think differently about books that I've read in the past that I then read again now, or I don't remember, in fact, whether I liked them or not, or I misremember. So it's, reading is very subjective. And if I picked up these books again another time, I might not like them as much because I would have different expectations from having given them 5 stars in the first place. So he's probably right. But, that's how it's turned out in this reading year. And I'm very happy about it. I'm going into 2026. You'll be seeing this in January in 2026 with not a massive number of plans for my reading. I've got very few Herculean prompts left to fulfill, so I don't feel a massive amount of pressure about that. So I'm just going to keep going with the channel, with the reading, and see what happens. So please give this video a like if you liked it, and subscribe to the channel if you want more content of me and Stanley talking about books, or Stanley yeeting books off camera and occasionally taking out the tripod. And yeah, please do let me know in the comments down below what your top book of 2025 is, if you have one. I hope you're enjoying the start of your reading year in 2026, and I will see you again in another video very soon. And don't comment about the cardigan. It's just let's leave it in this video and never speak of it again. Bye for now.